I can settle down and be doing just fine till I hear an old freight rolling down the line.
So
then I
you get the currawongs and the wattle birds and whatever make a bit of racket for the evenings, and sometimes you pick a bit of that up. But
Pros and cons, huh?
yeah, it adds a bit of, I don't know, adds a bit of a
I don't like
home
it.
feel to it.
Yeah, especially the Australian birds in the background. No
Got
problem.
an Indian one, huh?
Yeah, correct. If it's not, as long as it's not a blackbird. Well, there is the blackbird was the problem.
Well, it's back.
The blackbird's back. They're pretty
the
vocal.
blackbird's back, especially at about 6 o'clock every morning or 5:30 every morning, and around 6 o'clock in the evening. But it did disappear for a while, but now it's back. So
You can see why they brought them out, the blackbirds, because they do sound beautiful in England. If you're ever in the UK anywhere and you hear them there where they belong, it's a beautiful sound.
I'm sure Graeme might have a perspective on non-native birds.
Oh, yeah, well, so do I. Don't worry. So do I. Don't worry.
So we just allude to, I guess. So Graeme Stockton, welcome. Welcome to the Rambling Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Scott and Brian.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So we're just talking about yourself and your twin brother, Philip.
That's right.
Phil.
Yep.
My wife knows you. You might not know her unless you saw her, but she's a regular down at Surf Coast Whole Foods, where you and your brother go and have a coffee after a cold water swim.
Yeah.
But Ange introduced Phil to me as you the other day.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like it happens a fair bit, because she said, I know them now when they're together, but she was like, when you're apart, it was a bit tricky.
Yeah. I feel like, having been a twin all my life, grow up with people introducing themselves and then me not being sure whether I've forgotten who they are or I really don't know them.
Yeah. That's right.
Whether it's the right twin or not. Even you don't know sometimes whether they've got the right one.
Yeah.
And now it was Phil, wasn't it? Not you. There was the teacher at
That's
Belmont
right.
High.
Yeah.
Former teacher, current teacher.
He's just kind of retired this year.
Okay.
So
he taught our daughter Trinity at Belmont
okay.
High. So there's a bit of a connection there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Philip and I both did fine arts together at Deakin. I dropped out after the first year and he kept going and became a teacher of fine art and other things.
Yep.
And I went on to do horticulture.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously that's become a great lifelong passion for you.
It has.
Yeah.
It just, when you sign up for these things as a young person, you don't know where they're going to go. But ultimately it ended up defining most of my adult life.
And so did you and Philip grow up here in the Geelong area? I think from a bit of research I've done, you've been in Bellbrae or the Surf Coast area for about 30 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you come down from Melbourne or from...
Well, my folks owned the general store at Hall's Gap. And so my dad had an interesting history. He was an only child and his father was an alcoholic. His mother only had one kidney that worked. She knew she couldn't look after him. So when he was just 4 years old, she put him on a train and sent him up to Stall to be looked after by an auntie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then from there, that auntie owned the general store and it got passed down to Dad. And
he inherited the store from the auntie.
Yeah. And then my mum was working in the store and, two things, sort of got together. My dad was up in the war in his early life at 18. So, I look back and think, well, how would I be if I was 18? All I was thinking about was going surfing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my introduction. We moved down to Geelong at a young age, but it was my introduction to nature, really. And my mum had 5 other sisters and they were all sort of interested in nature and plants and stuff. So that rubbed off.
Yeah, okay. That is always a question, isn't it? How do you, did you grow up with in nature, with a love of nature?
Well, my mum in particular, she was always really excited when she saw orchids and stuff like that. So, the Grampians was, even after my dad sold the general store, he kept the house and used it as a holiday house up until we were about 12 or something.
Yeah.
So we were constantly going back and forward to do maintenance. And Philip and I used to just go off and play while they were doing that sort of that work. Elephant's hide and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So Mum was a stall or Hall Scap woman as well.
Hall Scap.
She was from Hall Scap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so fine arts is sort of a direction you initially went into. Did you move did you and Philip sort of, was that just because you kind of hung out and did the same things, or?
Pretty much. Being twins, you always end up doing things.
Yeah.
Like kick the footy,
Yeah.
playing cricket, whatever.
Yeah.
And then in early teenage years, surfing and stuff. And a little bit aimless, I guess, during those sort of early teenage years.
Yep.
And we just, like, both of us mucking around in art. So just sort of fell into doing that without really thinking about what we wanted to do. And it was only after the first year I kind of decided, it's not really for me. And was lucky enough to get a job at a local nursery that was called Waroona in Wellington.
Okay.
And things just sort of went from there. I wrote an application into Burnley Horticultural College at the time and didn't think much of it. Then all the people that had real credentials to get in, good qualifications, good marks at school, quite a few of them opted for other subjects. And so probably the last name on the scroll was my name and managed to just get in because I didn't have any chemistry or biology or anything. Then I got in, and I remember the first year was really tough. I was thinking, I'm just going to try and get what I can out of this and they'll boot me out. But I just managed to scrape through, and then kind of things got a bit easier every year after. And because it turned into a horticultural degree actually during the course, from a diploma to a degree, part of the course involved ecology. And I'd never actually thought about Geelong and the surrounding area as having an Indigenous landscape once. Pre-European times, what was it like? Because it was almost 99.9% wholly modified. And I remember Mum came down from the Grampians and tried to grow a lot of things from the Grampians in the limestoney soil that we were in in Herne Hill, and they wouldn't grow. And she was saying, native plants don't grow here, so that's why we've got all these other things. I didn't think about it at the time. But then during the ecology course, or part of the course at Burnley, it was pointed out to me all these plants that still exist. So I was totally fascinated that, wow, that there was this ecology, this ecosystem.
It's very specific to this particular area, is it?
All the things that you don't know about a place, and they were being unveiled during that course, and the ecology part of the whole course. I just loved it. So from there, I just sort of steered myself towards native plants and trying to learn more about them. And originally, I sort of left Burnley thinking that I'd do landscaping with native plants, but then you couldn't source them, so I ended up growing them. And you can kind of do anything you want, but you can't do everything. So it ended up that I just ended up focusing on growing
and selling them.
And somewhat at the time, there wasn't really an appetite for anyone for the Indigenous flora. So I did everything wrong. You through the course, you do your marketing essentially and find out whether there is that appetite. But instead, I just started growing them. And just serendipitously, it was at that turning point where councils started to become more and more interested. So my focus has always been the local flora of the Bellarine Peninsula and Torquay region, and essentially growing plants for land managers, for community groups, for large-scale revegetation within our area.
Okay, yeah. And so at this point, is this you moved down to the Surf Coast by this point? Well, by the time you were sort of looking to grow, you were growing these plants?
No. So I started my business in 1988.
Yep.
And I'd just finished up working on Lizard Island as the landscape manager there.
Okay.
And sort of moved down, back down this way, and in Geelong, that is, and sort of was trying to work out where I could make a start on all this.
Yeah.
I'd looked at a couple of properties in Belbray that I was keen on, and sort of serendipitously or luckily they fell through.
Okay.
And anyway, there was a property out at Newcombe that was on 1.5 acres, and my brother and I ended up buying it, jointly. And there was enough room to sort of clear a big space there and start the nursery, and it's still there to this day.
Oh, wow.
So the nursery you own is that nursery? Or
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in Newcombe. I assumed it was down here somewhere.
Well, it was essentially, at the time, I was thinking it's kind of a good halfway point between the Bellarine and Torquay.
Yeah.
So lived there built the nursery from scratch. It's as I say, it's essentially a growing facility, not a retail nursery or even a wholesale.
Yeah.
It's growing for those big land managers and community groups and parks and those sort of utilities.
So it's on quite a scale. Clearly, like you must be growing large numbers. For those customers.
When I was a much younger person, I guess around about 100,000 plants a year, sort of thing.
Yeah, wow, wow.
And it was just when I first started, I knew how to grow some of them just through horticulture, and you'd learn the techniques, but there were many plants that we didn't know how to germinate. So it was a learning process right from day one for me to try and unpack all those secrets that the native plants have. It's not like growing lettuces and where you just open the packet and put the seed out and they germinate. A lot of them have post-ripening dormancies and requirements of smoke or whatever.
Some of which probably haven't even been documented. Some of the plants maybe when you started. Did you even know that they were the requirements to get them to strike?
No. So it was.
You've got to find out what makes them germinate.
Yeah.
So you're smoking them and burning them and tossing them and drying them and whatever, I guess.
Yeah, well, there's
experimenting.
Smoke treatment stuff. That was only found out much later. I think probably the very late 1990s. So that came from a person in Western Australia at the Botanic Gardens there. So he opened that door, and then we just sort of followed that technique.
Yeah.
But there's still a large number of indigenous plants that are either incredibly difficult to grow or close enough to impossible.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I'm not an expert, but I know they're not. It's not like growing veggies in your backyard. But,
no, they grow when they want to grow.
Common garden plants. I understand that many of our indigenous plants are either impossible or very difficult to grow, to reproduce.
Yeah, and so that becomes a real issue when we notionally say we're going to do revegetation, because we only ever put back a simplistic version of what was there originally.
Of course,
and then over and above that, even when you can grow the whole suite of plants, all the soil conditions have most likely changed.
Yeah.
There's a huge weed bank in the soil, and many of those seeds last for a long time in the soil, and they germinate almost immediately after you've planted.
Yep.
And then even if you've got great success, often the surrounding areas are full of a seed bank as well. So even though you've got maybe, 100 Epacris, let's say, that you put in the ground, there could well be hundreds of thousands of panic veld grass, weedy grasses that it ultimately has to compete with. Yeah. So the revegetation by nature is much more simplistic. It's slow. It takes a long time, a lot of work. Whereas destroying the environment, the natural environment, is incredibly quick. You just need a front end loader, and you can undo 30 years work in one day.
Yeah. Put some concrete
or worse
down and
more than 30 years. 30,000 years of work in some cases.
Totally. Well, I'm just talking about our revegetation.
Yeah,
and how long, and then to take that back. Yeah, it takes the 30 years or whatever you're talking about to even get close to what's been changed in 3 days.
So a lot of the time, it isn't replaceable. It's not like for like. And even with the offsets that we think of when, say, we're flying overseas, and you can do an offset for the carbon emissions, they only ever that formula works for putting back a seedling, and a seedling can take 100 years to get to its maturity. So it's not actually like for like at all.
I'm really interested in the smoke thing. So you're basically saying that some seeds will germinate only if they get smoke treatment, which I imagine they would have done naturally after a fire, after bushfires, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine our indigenous people would have known that, or they would have observed that.
I think intuitively, they would see strong regeneration of things after fire. But they'd be thinking of it in a different way, like looking after country. Whereas we sort of almost go down to that species level, and oh my God, there's a whole lot of Apacrodaceae family coming up out of the ground. How did that happen?
Yeah, we look at it. Maybe more scientific. We need some evidence, scientific evidence, or something to back up a theory or whatever, don't we? Whereas, it's much more natural just to, like you said, observe and go, well, after the fire, everything's regenerating. Wow,
And the other thing is, Kingsley Dixon was the guy from the Western Australian Botanic Gardens that sort of identified it after following some work that was done in South Africa, because I've got a similar Proteaceae family, etc., etc. Anyway, what they observed with the smoke treatment was an interesting phenomenon. But then it took them, within smoke, there's hundreds and hundreds of different compounds, and it took them a long time to actually identify the magic ingredient.
Which element of the smoke was doing the germinating or creating the germinating? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so now they know, and you can as a horticulturist, you can actually purchase that in smoke
liquid
water
because of course you can smoke. I smoke some meats, so I smoke meats, and you can buy like you can use a liquid smoke now. So this must be what an element of what you're talking about. Some of the components of smoke can be put into a liquid and poured onto meat before you smoke it and give it a smoky flavour. Well, I don't use that. I'd rather just use some nice wood to get the smokiness through it. But you can buy liquid smoke, which is obviously this knowledge.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The elements that can go into a liquid, and then so you can use smoke without actually heat. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So you can, as a chemical.
You can do it as smoked vermiculite too.
Yeah, right.
Sort of a horticultural medium.
Yep.
And that has the same. Works the same magic.
So your great passion, your great passion has been your work, but it's also gone well beyond that. So we should have said right from the start, by the way, congratulations on the Order of Australia medal.
Thank you.
So that was only, a couple of months ago you awarded that? That was this year?
Yeah, this year.
And this year's birthday awards? Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine,
still don't quite know how to answer that one. It's sort of a big surprise.
I imagine you're a very humble man, so you're probably embarrassed by it being brought up. But it obviously recognises a lifetime of work in the environment. You founded Surf Coast Environmental Group. Was that the name?
Yeah, it was originally Surf Coast Energy Group.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's morphed into Surf Coast Environment Group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that so? Was that in response to the damage you're seeing done locally here on the Surf Coast? Was it a different reason? What was the sort of
or developers' intent?
Well, there's kind of multiple answers to that story. Originally, as a very young man, before it even started the nursery, I used to go surfing at Winky and stuff like that, and along the cliffs at Jones. I could see all the damage, just it being fragmented, compacted, eroded, weed invasion, etc., etc. And at the time, I thought, wow, I can see this all going badly, but there's nothing I can do. And then I just happened to see a notice in the window of the Bird Rock Cafe, as it was. And it was a notice, a call out to the community that a group of people, a group of surfers were incredibly concerned about what had happened at Bells Beach and the poor treatment that it was being delivered. And they wanted to start their own community group and to essentially show the then Barrabool Shire how you should look after the natural environment. So that was a group called Surfers Appreciating Natural Environment.
Yep.
I saw that notice in the window, and I didn't realise at the time that was actually a defining moment in my life, because that actually is central to how the rest of my life
panned out after that.
Panned out, yeah. So I know it seems common these days for community groups, but we were the first group that decided to take action on the coast. So we predated Coast Action by about 4 years.
Yep.
And we just got together, and I knew I had some skills in horticulture, so I was able to start growing the plants. And from there it was pretty much a 35-year, once a month working bee, and working with the corporate entities like Rip Curl and Quicksilver, doing large-scale revegetation, working towards putting it back. And then also Janjak Coast Action formed in 1992. So they sort of knitted up where Surfers Appreciating Natural Environment was working in the Bells Reserve up to, say, the Wave. Janjak Coast Action took over the next bit. Torquay Coast Action formed and they took over the next bit. So there was this contiguous community management of land, and the community was well ahead of the land management bodies at that time in actually looking after the natural environment.
So just to step back a second, the damage to, you mentioned Bells Beach in particular, is that just human traffic? Is that what's caused it?
Yeah, largely. Yeah.
Going across the dunes without any sort of...
well, essentially cliffs there.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's different to dunes, different flora.
Okay, yeah.
But at the time, in particular, we would do some revegetation work, and then there'd be the Bells Beach contest.
Right, yeah.
So we would put the plants in, they would start, because it's a very harsh environment, to get a move on, and then the community would people would come in and trample them. So we had a really frank conversation with Rip Curl at the time, and you can imagine Rip Curl trading on that whole environmental perspective. To their credit, they listened to us. Well, that's essentially when we got the seating arrangements that actually sat up above the vegetation instead of people climbing over the mooners to sit on the vegetation. And that's when the whole thing started to change. And then in the year 2000, Rip Curl actually started their Planet Days thing, where all the staff within Rip Curl were given the opportunity to volunteer and do work for all the community groups, and Rip Curl paid for that.
They funded
that stuff.
They essentially funded their time.
Yeah. So then we were able to really scale up the revegetation work. and it took that long. It took over 30 years for us to actually knock it back into shape. And at the same time, as I was saying, Janjuk Coast Action were starting to work initially with the Torquay Public Reserves. Torquay Public Reserves didn't even have an environment person then. But then that evolved into having an environmental team, as I've got now at Gallcapper. And so they started work on that part of the cliffs. And we can say that our work has actually knitted up the vegetation. In terms of its ecosystem success, we've seen the increasing range of something like the rufous bristlebird, which is a federally listed endangered species. It's actually moved further along the coast. So it's increased its former range from what it was. And another one, Swamp Andochinus, has also re-emerged in the landscape. And that's essentially because continuous habitat matters. Things need to move from one area to the other, not just for breeding, but for other, food purposes and all that sort of stuff, and moving into refuges in times of climate stress, etc., etc. And in order for them to be able to do that, to rebound, for the population to rebound, they need to have that continuous habitat opportunity. So it's been a tremendous success, that whole coastal revegetation. So that there's the ecological success, but then there's the sociological sort of aspect to it, where if you go along the cliffs at any point these days, there's always hundreds of people use that every single day.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't like that. It was denuded. It was fragmented. In the winter, you'd grow a couple of inches because there'd be that much mud on the bottom of your feet. Or in the summer months, it was a matter of navigating big, runnels, and it wasn't pleasant to walk along at all.
It's interesting you say that, because, we've been here 17 years and we just take it for granted, I guess, that, we just take for granted that it's always been this beautiful. But, it's taken a lot of work to get it back to that point.
Well, I think a measure of success is when you can't tell between the remnant vegetation and what we've planted. So, I think there's always been a number of people within our community that are passionate about looking after the environment. And we're so lucky to have it. You could easily be in another suburb, in the western suburb, say, where they've literally got no natural environment
at
all.
Left. Yeah.
So we've got enough, and there's a tie to the ocean as well, and that makes people at least more aware of the natural environment and how fragile it is. And as you dig deeper and start to look after or look out for the things that are in the natural environment, all the bird life and everything else, it gets more and more interesting.
Absolutely.
Graeme, I was just wondering about how you go about working out which plants and how many of which varieties and how many and how big in a metre square or whatever, over an acre or whatever it is. So how do you actually, who comes up with what the appropriate revegetation, if you like, of the plants will be? And is it a combination of from trees to small ground covers or what does it look like? What's the work?
Well, that's a great question, because across Victoria there's been a whole lot of taxonomic research, and they've worked out essentially that there's 28 bioregions across Victoria, and within those bioregions there's a whole lot of things called ecological vegetation classes. And those vegetation classes give you a description of what the original flora pre-European times would have been, what it looked like, and then an idea of actually what some of the species might have been.
Right.
So Along the cliff tops, for instance, there's a mixture of coastal moon and woodland, but also heathland where there's no trees at all.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, well, we're going to go out and do tree planting.
Yes.
Well, in the heathland, it would be totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
But in those heathlands, which I should, reiterate, they're the most difficult because there's a whole lot of species there that we can't grow, and then when they've been removed, it's because something's happened to the soil. And many of those plants have this very high symbiotic relationship with fungi in the soil, and that's what allows them to thrive. Yeah. Once the soil's been modified, that fungal relationship's broken, and so it all of a sudden becomes about trying to put back pioneer species instead of exactly what was there.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that in those heathlands, you could get over 100 different, not just plants but species within a square metre.
That's what I'm thinking about. I think they have the complexity of this to get it back anything like it would have been before white people arrived, for example.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
No.
And so you do the best you can, and essentially trying to create or knit up the fragmented pieces so that at least it's providing, as I say, some semblance of what the original flora would have been. Yeah. And then, if you're doing something further inland, it's about, well, what was that flora like there? Was it a grassy woodland? Was it a Victorian volcanic plain or whatever? So it's actually paying great attention to what was there originally and the ecological vegetation classes, and thinking about what species would be appropriate for those particular different areas.
Well, isn't it great that there's some sort of a historical record about what was there? Who did that work then to pull all that taxonomy together to indicate what the species were?
The departments, some very clever botanists have done that work based on modelling, based on remnants within the landscape. Well above my pay grade. But it's very helpful because...
But essentially be state government, probably, scientists?
Yeah, scientists, within
all
the
Arthur
Rylah
Arthur Rylah stuff, wow.
Yeah. So...
fantastic.
And that
great?
works...
I just think that's fantastic to know that work's being done in terms of if you do want to try and get back to something.
It's ongoing too. Because often with what we get with the modelling, when you do the ground truthing, they don't actually exactly marry up.
Yeah.
So... it's an ongoing process, and I guess over the top of all that, we've now got climate change, which is potentially interfering greatly with how we put things back again.
What we can do now, and what's going to be sustainable, I guess, into a changed climate in the future as well.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and no one's got the answers.
I've just seen you flatten in your chair by about 2 centimetres when that thought crossed your mind.
Yeah,
you look a little bit.
Even where I live, not just a couple of trees are dying, but quite particularly some species in our district, swamp gum, messmate, ironbarks. You can see canopy thinning, and some trees are dying.
Is that because raising temperatures, do you think, or is it specifically that, or is it more complicated than that?
It's the trend towards decreasing rainfall. That's a long trend, and we saw the first instances of that in Western Australia starting from the late 1970s. That they've lost about a third of their rainfall. And we're now sort of copying that same trend.
Seems to be particularly acute. I don't know, this is very anecdotal, but I spent a bit of time on the land. I'm a hunter, I'm a waterfowl hunter, so I've got a great interest in wetlands, in Western Victorian wetlands. I grew up at Karamat, not that far south of where you were back in the day in Halls Gap. It's on those beautiful volcanic western plains, and those ephemeral wetlands. Every winter, it would rain and rain. It was wet everywhere. We couldn't move around the farm sometimes for 2 months on any sort of implement other than a horse, to get around. Beautiful long wet winters through the 1970s. And waterbird, breeding, hundreds of swans, brolga on the swamps, duck, beautiful, rich wetlands. Well, I haven't hunted for 2 years out there. None of those wetlands have had any water in them for 2 years. Where I go, this side of Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's a real worry. I mean, it will rain, and we've probably had a little bit of rain recently. Probably still not enough, I don't think, to get that country back into that really, really wet conditions.
No, it's not. It's not saturating the soil enough to get good surface water.
Get that runoff that you need to, and run into those low-lying areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a worry.
Yeah, we have this beautiful ghost gum just behind us. Unfortunately, it's not on our property, so we can't. But we watched that, and we worried that's dying. And I had no idea how to explain it, but I don't know if it's related to that. But it just doesn't seem to be healthy anymore.
Well, let's have this little discussion. I'm interested now. I want to get the expert involved here.
Yeah.
Well, we might say he's a complete expert
on the way out. We might have to give him to have a look
in eucalypts, but you called it a ghost gum.
Well, it's probably not a ghost gum. That's what we call it. Yeah.
When I think of ghost gum, it probably shouldn't be here. It's not. Well, it's not native to here. If it's a ghost gum, I think of it as ghost gum, but it might not be. No. But I don't know what. Graeme, that's sort of a eucalypt, a big white-skinned eucalypt, likely to be.
It could be a number of different species, but there's a big difference between species in horticulture that have got a place in the landscape, but they're not weeds per se, and it's the ones that escape out of the gardens that for various reasons. Maybe birds might distribute the seed or whatever, and then invade the coastal or the natural landscape. They're the ones that we need to pay particular attention to. So in our work along, say, the cliffs at Bells for 35 years, and ongoing now in Spring Creek, 99% of the work is trying to remove the threatening processes. And the threatening processes are essentially the environmental weeds. So in Spring Creek at the moment, we've been paying great attention to serrated tussock, and that's got a seed bank that lasts for up to 15 years. Wow. So
in the soil, so in the seed can stand itself for 15 years.
And gorse is another one.
Yeah.
And then spiny rush as well gets into the creek, and all those things have a huge impact on habitat opportunity. And the ecological integrity of a given area. So, and once you remove, say, all the adult plants, you just have to keep going then to deplete the seed banks, and every year the seedlings will come up. And then it's the job to get rid of them before they produce flowers and seed.
And they've got to be pulled by the root out, I guess, do they?
Well, yeah, if you get them when they're young, you can just literally manually pull them out.
Yeah.
If they get, with gorse, it's got a very deep taproot.
Yeah.
So then if it gets too mature, let's say, then you kind of have to resort to cutting and painting the stump with a herbicide. Yeah.
You mentioned Spring Creek. Let's get into Spring Creek. So that's been a great project, passion of yours for a long time now. I know when we moved to Torquay, every second car had a purple Slave Spring Creek sticker on it. It might not have been when we. It's very noticeable around here. I think the only other sticker you see on cars as much as the local mechanics. So, but it's obviously been a very strong local community campaign for a long time, and it's had quite a bit of success, right?
Graeme, can you put Spring Creek into the landscape first? I'd never heard of it until we were about to meet you. I live in Highton. I drive out here. I've only been here a couple of years to see Scott, but I don't ever recall crossing Spring Creek ever driving around. So where is it? What's it part of it catchment-wise? And can you describe it a bit to us?
Yeah, so Spring Creek comes out at Rocky Point. When you cross from Torquay, you go across that bridge and then up the hill to Janja.
Yes.
that bridge that you cross there is actually Spring Creek.
It's not Mark Spring Creek, is it?
Yeah.
Is it really? Oh, okay. Well, I've never noticed. So that's like the mouth of Spring Creek there.
That's the mouth.
That's where it comes out. Beneath the RACV?
You cross it at the footy club. Like
down from the footy club.
And
that's
up
it there.
to the golf club there.
Okay.
You're crossing it there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know where I cross it, and it rises.
Yeah, so we tend to think of Torquay as kind of a fairly gentle sloping area, and for nearly all of us, what we know of Spring Creek is just the mouth of it.
Yeah.
But then there's the hinterland, and once you get up into the hinterland, it forms a valley. It's not just a creek; it forms a valley, and from the ridge line down to the creek floor is a good 70 metres. So it's a genuine valley right in our backyard.
Yeah.
And somewhat uniquely, Spring Creek Valley is essentially shared by three separate communities, Belbray, Janjuck and Torquay.
Right.
I guess the contest to save Spring Creek Valley first was unveiled in 2007. And at the time, 6,000 houses were proposed to be put all the way up the valley to essentially connect Janjuck with Belbray.
Right.
And at the time, the community was up in arms, and we said, that's totally not on, that's crazy. But even then, we didn't really understand the ecological aspects of it. We saw it, most people saw it as a green space, a green wedge between Belbray and Janjuck, and just knew that we valued that green space, just as people in the Surf Coast value the green space that lies between Torquay and Geelong.
Yeah. So, am I right in saying that the valley that I know of, so that's like between, as you said, between Janjuck and Belbray, so it's all on privately owned land.
That's it.
So that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
And because I know that, I have a background in real estate, and I remember one of the members of the Bowls Club way back sold his property along there, one of those properties along there, for about $3 million, and I'm talking probably 10, 12, I'm probably talking 15, 12 years ago, something like that.
A lot of money.
Clearly
for developing.
To a developer, obviously.
Clearly, yeah.
And I did notice that it's just been up for sale and sold recently, so I wonder whether the developer's given up and decided to get out. But, so that's obviously one of the challenges, that it's been in the hands of privately owned land, which then big money is in the hands of the developers.
Yeah.
They land bank it thinking that they're going to get approval to develop. But there was a moment when Dan Andrews, not a huge fan, but it sounds like he's done one good thing right, when he basically drew a line in the sand, or a line along Duffields Road there, and said no more development beyond this point.
Yeah.
Is that's come from your campaigning, has it? Or
absolutely. So there's a long history. That I think the community had the Red Rally down at the Torquay Common in 2009. And at that Red Rally, we were able to essentially convince our councillors that we should not do a development west of Duffields Road. Yeah. At the time, we thought, good, we're done. But that was very naive in retrospect.
Council doesn't have to say.
No.
The minister can call it in.
Yeah.
The minister did call it in. And so at the time, Matthew Guy said there's going to be a development 1 kilometre west of Duffields Road.
Yep.
And we pretty much had lost the fight at that point and couldn't see a pathway to saving it. And then things just seemed to just settle into that space for a long time. We did some work on what is it that we can do to at least get a slightly better deal for Spring Creek than what was offered. We put a lot of work into that. We weren't listened to, and I could go on a long sort of narrative about this idea of striking balance. But it's important to understand that if you see an ecosystem 100 years ago, you see it in, or 180 years ago, you see it in all its completeness. But as the years go by and it gets depleted, when new generations come along and they see it, they don't see what was there originally. They just see a percentage of what was there.
Yeah.
So when the developers come and the politicians come along and they go, oh, we've got to have a balance between development and what's left in nature, their idea of balance is keeping a few ballerine yellow gums. Well, as we said, we don't want a ballerine yellow gum museum. We want an ecosystem. So it's not the same thing.
Right.
And anyway, just things slowly seem to just turn politically. And Darren Cheeseman entered the fray in 2019 at the state election.
Local member.
Local member for then the Labor Party at that time.
Yep.
And after conversations with us, he declared that he would set, as a member, he would set the boundary at Settlement Road as his pledge. And we had at the same time we formed a little group to fight the whole sort of, which had been ongoing for a long time. But then we decided that in order for us to get anywhere, we had to get into the politics of the whole thing. And Barwon, the seat of Barwon, South Barwon, was marginal. So Damien Cole, a local, ran as an independent in that election. And it was on the basis of his preferences that then Darren Cheeseman got in. And so he pretty much led Daniel Andrews to have to commit to that pledge. And even then, when we thought we'd finished, we found out that we hadn't finished. There was the introduction of the distinctive area landscape, where the developers once again had a chance to talk to an independent panel with all their legal largesse, barristers and all
fancy
expert
lawyers,
witnesses,
Scientific experts,
and then the ragtag community had to try and put up a case against that, and just to show the sort of the feeling that the community had. By this time, we had a sort of a taste of what we could achieve. The community raised $100,000 within a few weeks, and we had our own barrister during those hearings. Ultimately, we lost that distinctive area landscape battle. The Standing Advisory Committee had recommended to the government that they continue development all the way up the valley. But the politics of it then was clearly understood. The community did not want that development. And on the basis of that, the government listened. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. And so on the basis of that, the distinctive area landscape was formed, which gave a protective overlay to the area. The settlement boundary was set at Duffields Road. And even now, in these last stages, there's still the legacy of the zoning that went from farm zone to urban growth zone by then Planning Minister Matthew Guy, and we're still waiting for that to be back zoned to farm zone. So we're pushing very hard for that to happen before the state election.
It's kind of an ongoing battle, though, isn't it? Like, I mean, if it gets taken back to farming zone, that's a huge win, because then it takes a lot to take it back the other way again. So, whereas where it sits now, it's still, it's still in territory.
According to the advice we've got, we're sort of 95% there, and it would be a very brave developer to go, what, I'm gonna go for this.
Exercise it.
They could lose a lot of money. But in order for us to close the door properly, that zoning does need to be completed.
Have it rezoned.
So even in, if there's anyone out there listening, we would say a letter to the planning minister, the Honourable Sonia Kilkenny, just saying, please complete the promise that you made to the community of Torquay and complete that back zoning to farm zone.
Okay. And what a great time to do it.
Yeah.
Right now would be definitely the time to do that. Yeah. Act quickly in the next couple of months.
Well, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, let's put that up.
Yeah, remind people of that.
That's easily done. A simple thing to do. Could I just add to that and keep your local member in the loop? I'd suggest that anyone's intending to write to that minister, that's a great idea, and send a copy of that to the local member as well.
Yeah.
That same letter.
Yeah.
Yep. So you get two approaches to the issue.
I want to explore the significance of the Spring Creek Valley next, because I have watched some of the videos you've done online, and it's really fascinating. I just want to touch on that thing about, we talked about this before, Brian. I want to park it for later, right? The role of independence in politics, particularly at the moment.
Elected
and
representatives.
You talk about running simply to be able to push preference into the person you want to win, win the fight. And this is what's happening, particularly in state politics at the moment now. All these independents, knowing they're never going to win the seat, but that they're doing it in order just to kind of disrupt things and to be able to push their preferences.
Well, they do win. They can win, and some are winning. And I think it's fantastic for our democratic system. And I think it's well and truly needed to break up the views and to bring a stronger community voice to local issues.
Absolutely, to these kinds of issues that can quite easily be swept away by.
Graeme, you've got a lot of energy. Could we talk to you later on about perhaps getting you up as a local independent for November?
Why would he want to ruin his life like that?
There's some people that are absolutely fantastic at that work, and I'm not one of them.
I'll leave that to those so inclined. Yeah.
So can we talk about the significance of the valley, of Spring Creek and the Spring Creek Valley? Like I said, it's hard. Like I was down at Ashmore Arts on the weekend because the Spring Creek Arts Trail, which is fantastic. Ange, my wife, had some exhibits in there, and what it's a fantastic property. Stu's done a great job down there. It's a wonderful little community for artists, and you get that beautiful view of the valley through there. But for most people, they don't get to see it because it is all on private property. You kind of drive. If you go down Duffields Road, you'll see it. A bit of a glimpse of it. But what is its significance? You mentioned earlier the Ballerine yellow gum as a endangered species, which obviously has a place down there. You talked about some bird life and so on. Can you sort of enlighten us a little bit more about how important it is for this local region?
Yeah. So they brought up a couple of really interesting points there. The first thing that the community needs to understand is that saving the valley from the developers is not the same as saving its ecology. So that's a really important point. The second point is that across Victoria, only about 60% of our species and ecosystems are protected under the National Reserve System, so national parks, etc., etc.
Okay.
The remaining 40% are not, and they're held in private land ownership.
On freehold property,
on freehold property.
Yes.
So Ballerine yellow gum is a quintessential example of a species that's been essentially left out of that National Reserve System. And without private property involvement in looking after its ecology, it's going to continue to disappear. So Ballerine yellow gum is an endemic species that essentially, by the way, Torquay is essentially part of that Ballerine Peninsula. Geographically, it's part of the Ballerine Peninsula. It was first described, Ballerine yellow gum, in 1998, so very late in the piece. And it essentially occurs along the eastern flank of the Ballerine Peninsula to as far southwest as Bells Beach. In the time of European colonisation, all these coastal areas have had tremendous modification applied to them, initially through agriculture, but then through urbanisation. And as a result, only 5% of its original range still exists. Of that 5%, most of it is highly fragmented and doesn't perform its ecological function like it used to. And it turns out that the remnants along Spring Creek Valley stretch for some kilometres along the valley, and as a result, they're remnant trees, old remnant trees, and they form this continuous band, and so ecologically they're incredibly significant. Old trees also provide hollows, and I always like to think of the story of, say, back in the days when Botany Bay was first inhabited by Europeans, and Governor Arthur Phillip, if he planted a red gum at that time during the original colonisation, it would only just now becoming useful for an owl.
Wow. Yeah.
So they take a long time to produce these hollows.
Yeah.
If you put up a nesting box, for instance, a typical nesting box, it might have a lifespan of 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big gap, you know. So those remnant trees that occur along Spring Creek Valley, even though it's a very skinny ecological corridor, it's punching way above its weight because it's got all these very old mature trees, and some of which could easily predate European colonisation. And I kind of like to think, well, what if those trees could speak? What would be the stories that they'd tell? You know, there'd be the Wadawurrung people using it as a travel route. There'd be bandicoots, emus, wombats, koala in parts of the upper reaches of the catchment. All these things that have been lost from the landscape, but they were the original locals.
Do you think they've been left, Graeme? Well, they could have been left for a range of reasons, but if it's freehold property and it's been farmed, they're maybe too big to cut down. They've left some big trees for a bit of shade in the day, or how? I mean, it's great they've survived, but how have they survived intensive farming?
Well, I think it comes down to, at the time, practicality. It was just seen as they're in the creek. That last little bit of land is kind of not worth our effort.
Right, so they're sort of growing like a red gum right down in the watercourse.
Well, next to it at least.
Yeah, right. Okay.
In so some parts, it's only the remnant vegetation is only a couple of trees wide, so it's
and it's close
skinny.
to the waterway itself.
Yeah.
Right, so that in part answers that question. That'd be why they weren't cleared. It wasn't arable land that they could put a crop into, essentially.
No, I mean, there's still, cattle grazing and stuff like that. But back in the day, for all sorts of reasons, people farmed the land, and their concept of farming the land was about making it work. And if you had native vegetation on it, then that was just an impediment to getting it to work as you want to, and getting an income. But there was actually also a lot more native vegetation back then. That's not the case anymore. So, and as I said earlier, without that private land ownership involvement, then a whole catalogue of species and ecosystems are going to disappear from the Victorian landscape. So there's changes, and trying to get those landowners involved in that requires sort of education, but it also requires financial opportunity. And our government's been slow to create that. They've talked about it a lot, but they haven't actually done it. So there's the biodiversity credits, which, nature positive that we've talked about over the last few years. There's carbon credits, both of which are very immature and not really available to most people at the moment. Trust for Nature is sort of providing opportunities by providing relief from land tax if a farmer sets aside land for nature. But the way I see it, private properties, at least up to this point, if they do set land aside for nature, it's not because there's a financial reward. They're doing it simply because it's a nod to nature.
Yeah.
And for me, they shouldn't have to burden or bear the burden of that protection.
As individuals, they shouldn't have to pay the cost for us as a community.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I think that's a really important point too, because there are some very, very good private land managers, who do have their heart in it and who have done and continue to do a lot of good work, but they're right at their cost, at their own cost, and the land's really, the whole concept of freehold title property, is a challenge for us as a species in the world, isn't it? Because, we don't, I'm a bit more inclined to think like our Indigenous people and First Nations did about, the land owns us actually, so we need to look after it and treat it well. We don't own it because it doesn't last, private ownership doesn't last long, and the land and what's on it, its birds and animals and plants are there forever, hopefully.
Yeah, well, what's the equity to nature in a global economy where we've got this crazy idea that we can just do infinite growth? Like, as I say, you could tell that to a 2-year-old kid and they would understand that you can't do infinite growth on a finite planet. Yeah. You say that to an economist or a developer, I think, that's the system that we've got. Well,
and it's even more important in this country where we have a huge, sections of this country that we can't grow food on. So we can't, we only have a strip of nature that we can actually, that is habitable really by most people. So,
well, I think that which sort of brings me to, why the Surf Coast Environment Group exists. It's not as purely about ecology. It's about this whole notion of sustainability and what that looks like at the community level. So the Surf Coast Environment Group, in following the literature, uses systems thinking to think about how we would get good outcomes, not just for our community but for nature and for economy. Yeah. So we use this idea of the 4 E's, which is ecology, energy, economy, and equity. And if you're going to look at how you do any one of those things, what's the impact of the other 3, essentially? Yeah. And that, for me, is why Spring Creek Valley has become even more important, because with community stewardship, we could create this community model that actually responds to those big global issues at the local level. So we have the great example of Stewie at Ashmore Arts, who is providing economic opportunity for over 40 artists locally. He earns a dividend as, renting the studios. So he earns some money. The local artists, then that money is going back into the local community as a revolving fund. It's not being offshored to Amazon or anything. So that's a good local model of how you would think about something that's sustainable. At the same time, he's running that business on 10% of his land, but the rest of it, the other 90%, is actually set aside for nature. So it's thinking about nature's equity as well as how you make an economic return. So that's been somewhat serendipitous for us, because rhetorically that would be the model that we would go, this is how we need to think about things.
It's not easy though, is it? Because I know, Stu's fought local council for a long time and still does whenever he wants to put, new cabins up. There's always ongoing fights, which is draining, energy draining. It's expensive. We've talked to Matty at Freshwater Creek Estate, who was, trying to regenerate some land there, but needs to be able to generate income off the land, off the property as well. It's not easy. You can't just go, I'm going to buy a 100-acre property or whatever and use, 10 acres of it to generate income, because there's local council planning issues and all of that. It takes someone very dedicated to the cause, really, doesn't it?
It does. And circumstances have changed, I think, from the early days when Stewie sort of first proposed that. There's been a great partnership with SCEG and the local community. So The Quicksilver board riders have come and done voluntary work there. That we continue to have monthly working bees there to all of that on sort of restoring the local ecology. And I think the council can see that as a model, it's a useful model to follow. And Stewie himself acknowledges that there's limits to growth with the number of studios. So instead of trying to hoard it all for himself, he's encouraging some of his neighbours as well to do a similar thing.
Yeah.
And ultimately for us, I digress again. Up on the southern ridgeline of Spring Creek Valley, running parallel to the Great Ocean Road is the old Great Ocean Road.
Oh, yeah.
And that's on 9.2 hectares of public land.
Okay.
And it runs across the top of the ridgeline on the southern boundary of Spring Creek Valley.
Wow.
So a road reserve still.
It's an old road reserve.
Yeah.
And
So is that sort of running up behind where the Christian College is now?
That's it, yeah.
Okay.
So what the community, once again, as the leaders, have done, particularly a person called Shauna Burford, has done is acknowledge that there's this asset there, and it had fallen between the cracks. Vic Roads thought that the Shire was managing it. The Shire thought that Vic Roads was managing it, and it just got left to its own devices.
Yeah.
So the community picked up the ball, like at once, particularly Shauna, and decided, okay, how do we turn this asset into something that's highly usable and responds to the whole idea of Spring Creek Valley and kids going to school and all that sort of stuff. So the whole Ridgeline Trail is now going to extend from pretty much the corner of the Anglesea Road all the way down to Duffields Road. Okay. So at the moment, the old Great Ocean Road finishes at Christian College. Yeah. It'll continue further east all the way down. Yeah. And that will almost make the link between there and the eastern section on the other side of Duffields Road.
So almost get that connection, that corridor again of habitat.
So, well, it's the corridor. So if you get back to the energy part of the equation, it's providing links through the local landscape where people can commute on pedestrians or cyclists, and kids in particular, to go to school and not get dropped off in an SUV, but actually ride to school and
safely.
So Shauna's work there wasn't just about advocating for the trail, and consequently the Shire set aside over $1 million to help resurface and create that trail. So it's been incredibly supportive. But they also had to get the kids across the Great Ocean Road, where cars are travelling downhill at speed. Yeah. So we got that took a long time to get those pedestrian crossings in place. Yeah, it was just a much bigger piece than what anyone had originally considered.
How long's, sorry, Graeme, you might have mentioned, but I might have been thinking of something else when you said it. How long's this piece of land we're talking about? How long's this trail or road?
It's I think it's 3.8 kilometres in length.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And is it accessible now?
It's accessible. Okay. It's accessible now, but it will be finished by around about February next year. There's all sorts of things, had to get cultural heritage approvals and other things. There's utilities that have got Bowen Water and Power Core. All these things take a long time. Pretty much ticked all those boxes now, and we're into the final stretch.
And is it in the sort of it's one of the important uses, isn't it, of our roadways, road reserves? There's a lot of I don't need to tell Graeme this, there's a lot of rare plants that are only found there now, certainly in Western Victoria where all that land's been ploughed and farmed. All those road reserves are really important for local Indigenous plant species of all sorts. this reserve we're talking about now, does it have still got mature trees in it and other valuable plants growing in it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the trail is sort of like a transect of one end of the creek line to the other, and it goes through different soil changes as it moves across that transect. Yeah. So at the western end, you've got lowland forest with messmate dominating. Yeah. As you move further down towards the east, towards Janjuk, it becomes grassy woodland dominated by Ballerine yellowgum. Yeah. And then as you get to the high point down around Duffields Road, where it's got coastal exposure, it then becomes Moona woodland and then drops again back down into a mix of yellowgum and Moona. And then ultimately at the end, it's estuarine. So there's all these changes in vegetation that reflect soil, exposure to coastal salt winds, etc., etc. It's also a great opportunity for all of our community to be introduced to Spring Creek Valley. So that we've never had that opportunity before because it's all private land. Yeah. And I know people that have lived here for over 30 years that have never been into those upper reaches of Spring Creek Valley. And now all of a sudden we can tell the story of the ecology, why it's so significant, why it's not just a piece of green agricultural wasteland, that it's so much more. We have done lots of studies now as well, like in inventories of the flora and fauna within the valley. And there's 12 species that we know have used the valley that are registered at state level for their significance, and 5 of those are listed federally.
Are you talking bird or animal species or plant?
Birds and animals.
Birds and animal species.
The Ballerine yellowgum is listed as a state under the Flora and Fauna Guarantee as a statewide threatened species. And Moona further down the valley Moona woodland is also listed under the Flora Fauna Guarantee Act. Yeah. But in our studies, what we did, which astounded everyone, was found swamp antechinus in the upper reaches of Spring Creek Valley. So it wasn't modelled to be there at all. And Associate Professor Barbara Wilson, when she first found the first evidence of it there, was really taken aback. She did not think that they would be there.
So can you just clarify what that is?
Yes, okay.
Please.
So a swamp antechinus is a native carnivorous marsupial, so a pouched animal.
Yep.
It's got the most extraordinary life cycle. The male only lives for 9 months. Like for a carnivorous mammal, that's amazing.
Yeah.
There is a period in the life cycle of swamp antechinus when there are no adult males left on planet Earth.
Wow.
They're all as young.
Okay.
On the female.
Yep.
I'm hoping Graham's going to tell us why why there aren't any.
Yeah. So
Scott might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Well, I think why there aren't any. Why all the males die
Do they get eaten? No.
No, they shag themselves to death, basically.
Really?
Is that somewhere near true?
yeah, it is.
They do.
They've got incredibly large testes, the male, and they go on a breeding bender, and they die of exhaustion. They literally die of exhaustion.
Well, you could always say they died doing what they loved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a happy story, happy ending.
It's an amazing story.
So,
it's an amazing story.
To visualise, are they like a swamp rat kind of thing?
About the same size.
Yeah, but they're a marsupial. Yeah.
Yeah, not a rodent.
Yeah.
So swamp rat, by the way, is a native rodent.
Yep.
And essentially their home range would be in the Otway Ranges. And as Associate Professor Barbara Wilson, who's an expert small mammal ecologist, says, up until the 2000s, it was more about understanding their distribution and their ecology and all that sort of stuff. But after 2000, they fell into a serious state of decline across the Otway Ranges, essentially because of declines in rainfall. So when they turned up in Spring Creek Valley, that would be their most eastern distribution out of the Otway Ranges. Mm-hmm. When they turned up in Spring Creek Valley, what's actually happening there is that so many of our species are contracting back to those river systems, creek systems, where there's moisture throughout the whole year, as Spring Creek does. Mm. And they're important climate refuges. And so the population in Spring Creek will be incredibly precarious. And it's fantastic that they're there, but it's also acknowledgement of what's happening across the broader landscape. That decline of species, some species that have been here for millions and millions of years have gotten to 2026, and who knows how much longer they're going to go for. But it's not the only one. We also found a southern emu wren up in the in Spring Creek. Wow! And we found other, as I said, 12 other species listed at statewide. Yep. But all this stuff, I should say, wasn't modelled for the development. So the development did an impact study as they're required to do, but I think somewhat disingenuously did the impact study just within the kilometre, so they were able to say, nothing to see here, let's develop it. Yeah. But they didn't take into account the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, of course.
And so all these things that you would never have modelled or thought would be there in the landscape, well, they are. We've got documented evidence of them.
That's a really interesting point you've just made there, because it makes me think about like systems thinking. So if you want to develop this piece of land, right, and you have to do all these surveys on it, for in terms of traditional owners, water, a whole range of things on that piece of land. Well, that's not enough.
No,
it's got to be all the adjoining land for a distance as well, doesn't it? And some continuous features of the land should be considered as well. That you should really have to prove that it's not that point in the landscape, but its connection to surrounding landscape potentially as well, that the impact might occur across.
Yeah, well, it's that whole thing of death by 1,000 cuts, really. And that's largely what's happening everywhere. And so I constantly go back to that idea of what are the limits to growth? Should it be determined more by the biocapacity of the area, the continent, the planet, to support in that growth? And as it turns out, we've just passed a thing in the calendar year called Earth Overshoot Day. Okay. So that was on the 30th of July. And Earth Overshoot Day marks the point in the calendar year where the global economy has used up 1 year's worth of resources, and the remaining 5 months of the year will be chewing into the planet's capital to keep delivering that economic return.
Okay. Yep.
So at its most simplest, it's not sustainable.
No.
And
is that day, is that the same day every year, or is it getting shorter and shorter?
No, it's getting earlier.
Yeah, getting earlier in the year every year, yeah.
So
it's like the doomsday clock.
Yeah, it is a bit, isn't it?
Ticking back.
Yeah.
It's like we first moved into that point of negative growth in 1970, and year by year that's continued to grow. So we actually use 1.75 planets worth of resources to run the global economy. There's another really important thing that people should be aware of. It's called the 9 planetary boundaries. So people typically understand the issue of climate change. Whether they accept it or not, it's up to them, but climate change is just one of those planetary boundaries. So Earth scientists described the planetary boundaries in 2009, and the shot across the bow was we should not overstep those boundaries. We should be constantly aware of how we're managing planet Earth and keeping within those boundaries. They're if you flip it, they're planetary services that we all take for granted. in 2015, we'd transgressed 3 of those boundaries. By 2026, we've transgressed 7. Once again, if nothing else, it's a question about sustainability. Is it sustainable? Well, no, it's not. And so one way or another, we need to modify how we do things, transformationally, I would say, or the planet will do it for us. And that's kind of why I think the Spring Creek model and working at the community sustainability level is so important, because change is actually essentially driven from the bottom up. It never comes from the top down.
So you're saying, like, by being able to get it right in Spring Creek as a microcosm, we can then sort of translate that into a much broader scale, on more of a macrocosmic level, and use that same model?
We can look at the things that we're responding to at that global level, the big issues, and how do we respond to them at the local level. So that there's actually in the literature some stuff that's stuck in my mind. Once I read it, I just thought, oh wow, that makes so much makes so much sense, and it's this. If you respond at the individual level to those big global issues, you've got high leverage but no impact. If conversely you go, okay, let's tackle this at the state, national, or even higher international level, you've got potentially high impact but almost no leverage. So you could bang your head against the wall forever and not get anywhere. The sweet spot is actually at the community level, where you've got high leverage and potentially high impact. And if you can create that model of how a community is responding, then that's something that's transferable to other communities. And that's when it becomes important.
So lots of little communities do it. That's when it becomes a bigger...
And communities can look at what we did and emulate that very same thing. So one of the things in Spring Creek Valley, for instance, that I'm really interested in chasing down, which has proved a whole lot harder than what I originally thought, is that idea of community land purchase. With community land purchase, you've got the ridge line that runs up across that southern ridge of Spring Creek Valley. How you might create a trail that then goes down through community land and connects up to Spring Creek. How you would grow your own food on that land, at a community level, particularly fruit trees, which aren't too much work, and how you would do that. If you use treatments like espaliering, you can intensify the amount of production that comes out of an area,
smaller area,
with a smaller area.
Yeah.
And then also that nod to nature, setting aside a large amount of that land towards nature. And then, you can do other interesting things, like all the energy that's required on site could be through renewable energy. And then partnering with the schools that are within the valley, like Belbray Primary School, Christian College, on the other side, Torquay College, St. Therese, getting the kids involved in connecting to nature as part of the curriculum, because it's just sort of an extra additional thing that we do these days.
Yeah, we find it hard to believe that that mainstream schools, government schools, don't get out in nature more. Our daughter, when we were in Perth, went to a Reggio Emilio school, and part of their nature-based learning is a core part of their program. And it's just such a wonderful way for kids to learn.
Yeah, well, just, how many people know about the local flora and fauna, all those things that we share this landscape with. How many do we even know about? So I think that reconnecting to nature is incredibly important as we move into this 21st century. And the opportunity for the community to play a role in that, you could add an extra E, education, to the 4 E's. That's and as far as that goes, cultural heritage, Wadawurrung, partnering with them in that as well. So if you can actually achieve that, then I think you've got something to talk about. Like that's when I think you've got a response that's that actually going to have and it's got those important values where you're not actually playing to the orthodox global economic model. You're actually playing to a different model. There's a whole lot of work that's been done by economists like Kate Raworth, and she's produced a book called Donut Economics. And the donut, essentially, if you look at the outer ring of the donut, is the planetary boundaries, and the inside ring of the donut actually is where governments are trying to support their citizenry with health, education, and all that sort of stuff. Well, at the moment, if you look across the planet, we're failing at both ends. So there needs to be this big readjustment. And I guess I would say if you accept the science of climate, and if you accept that, the earth scientists and the climate scientists said that 2 degrees is the threshold we shouldn't break, and if you look at what's happening now, the last 30 years we put more carbon into the atmosphere than ever before, well, we're actually approaching that 2 degrees threshold. And the modelling tells us that big ecosystems are about to flip. And once again, it's telling us that we need to actually make big changes in order for us to continue civilization. And they're big things to take on board. But where do you start? You start at that local level, and you start with looking at things in a transformational different way, and ask yourself, is this sustainable or isn't it?
Do you know of other communities in the? I mean, it's such a tough question, isn't it? How do we change it at that global level?
And where do you start?
This is the
thing. Like, so where do you start?
It just seems like an almost impossible task, but you don't want to let that stop you, right? And certainly, people like yourself and the people who you work with are obviously not letting it stop them. You're doing everything you can to make the change, like you said, at the community level, which is the important place to start. Do you know of other communities sort of in like expanding outwards? Are you seeing that there are other communities doing what you're doing, and maybe that there is hope that these things are all going to kind of join up and make a big difference?
What I see, particularly internationally, is a huge conversation that's going on internationally about what are the things that we need to do. And I find that incredibly interesting because some people are doing great things. I get back to that thing about when you're trying to restore a landscape, it takes time. It takes a long time, and you've got to nurture it. So it's not a surprise to me that we've created, essentially off of fossil fuels, this whole infrastructure and way of doing things that's based on the notion of fossil fuels being permanent
and forever, cheap,
mobile, and they've pretty much framed everything that we do. And we're sort of at the other end of that now, because there's consequences for all that energy use from fossil fuels. So there's this big discussion which I find really interesting. And strangely, I worked in Guatemala during the 1990s with a community that was internally displaced through the civil wars. But those communities, I think I learned from them way more than I was able to help them with. But what I learned was this whole thing about community working together, because that's what they did in order to survive. And their whole notion of what was possible and what they did as part of their daily life really influenced me. So there's such a big disparity between wealth across the planet, as we all know.
Yes.
And I was working with some of those that were incredibly poor, and I remember one guy had a big ulcer on his foot, and he had through the European Union, everyone had gumboots at the time, but the gumboots were obviously creating lots of moisture and making it worse. And I said, well, why don't you get yourself some thongs? And he just said, I haven't got the money to get that. So, and then another comment to me once, because we lived pretty close to Tikal, the Mayan ruins, and he'd never been because he didn't have the money to get there. And I just that always just kind of stayed with me because
his own heritage, his own birthright.
Yeah.
He can't get to it
within 2 hours.
Whereas tourists are travelling from outside the planet to go see,
That's awful, isn't it?
It just kind of sticks with me as a benchmark for how different cultures, different people live on the same planet, and what we think of as normal is actually not that within this fossil fuel era. It's actually not normal. It's this spike in energy that we've been able to enjoy for 200 years, but it's not forever. No. It's just not going to. We just have to make a different transition.
Yeah, it strikes me that if everyone was able to generate their own energy use on their own property, that's not taking into account big business and industry and what have you.
Yeah.
But a lot of this problem would go away, wouldn't it? Like if you could just generate enough for one household, which doesn't seem to be. Well, we've got split systems, we've got all these things these days, but it seems you can survive fairly comfortably on one property,
self-sufficient,
generating your own power,
or much more than if not entirely. Certainly I'd be a lot closer to it than we are now.
Yeah.
So I guess my response to that is yes, we do need to do that.
Yeah,
but technology is never going to solve our problems because technology is agnostic. And it creates as many problems as it solves. So you look at data centers and Bitcoin and stuff, which are using huge amounts of energy and water.
Not to mention eating into land, land space.
And then that's not going to solve the whole idea of growth either. Like once again, what's biodiversity's equity in all this? So we just have to think about things differently. And I'm just sort of opening up that question for people to ponder, not because it's easy, it's hard, and that's essentially what SCEG is trying to respond to. We can't solve it, but we can respond to it.
So I was just going to ask about the 4 E's you mentioned earlier, and then you mentioned a 5th E in education. Well, that's going to be, I think that's critical. That's going to be critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Into
education,
taking this forward like that. That is where if there's any hope of this ever going anywhere, it's going to have to be in future generations understanding this stuff, coming to grips with it, and acting on it locally, and then that building. Without that.
Well, understanding it right at that local level, at the doorstop level, isn't it? The local ecology.
Your biodiversity, your local ecology.
Without thinking about great big wind towers or the big scale thing where people just go too hard and they shut down. Understanding the big impact.
The resources, the energy, the limits of it at your local level.
Well, I think particularly, say with Spring Creek Valley, it's the ecology is the hook. Like if we could get community land, for instance, there's this benefit, sociologically within the community. People get to know each other, get to know their neighbours, get to work on something that's meaningful, restoring the ecology. All that stuff is really important because it's also been shown in the literature that if there's a big disparity in equity between the rich and the poor, that's when you get violence. And that's when you get all that vandalism and stuff like that. So it's really important. There's two ways we can go at this point. We can sort of see it globally. When things get tough, we start fighting, or when things get tough, we start working together. So there's this great opportunity to work together, and the benefits could be we're growing our own local food as much as we possibly can, because food miles matter. We're reintroducing ourselves to nature within the landscape. Like watching a wedge-tailed eagle flying in the valley is, that's a privilege. You don't get that out on the Western Basalt Plains around Tarneet or whatever. Nature's not there anymore. We have nature in our backyard. If we nurture it, we can really look after it, and we can also be ambitious. So I like to tell the story of Koala, which was originally one of the local inhabitants around the Torquay area through the woodlands of Torquay. It's not here anymore. But then my thing would be, well, should we just lament the fact that it's gone, or should we be ambitious and go, let's put back those woodlands? And wouldn't that be a terrific thing? Like emus as well, and wombats, for instance. They're locally extinct, but there is an opportunity to bring them back. Odonata do great work, and you've got a great example of that out at Mount Rothwell on the north side of the Uyangs.
Oh, yeah.
Where they've reintroduced, fenced in this case, a whole lot of very rare species like the eastern barred bandicoot.
Okay.
You can go there on bookings and go there after dark, because that's when most of our small mammals are busy. And you can get this insight into what pre-European Geelong used to look like with our mammals. It's an absolute eye-opener.
I've done
fantastic.
that. Not there, but in the old days, the Earth Sanctuaries, I think were a predecessor to the current group, and they had. I went to one of theirs and did a night walk in some Mallee country, somewhere over the South Australian Victorian border. I forget exactly where it was now. One night there was a camp there, and we'd put the head torches on. And you go around and look. You know what it reminded me of? The Drover's Dream.
Yeah, right.
Do you know that magnificent poem?
Oh.
Yeah, the Drover's Dream, and you're just walking knee deep in animals, critters everywhere. They're all out and about, and they're used to having people walk around at night. So all of these furry things which you've never even seen before. Betong and bilby and stuff, all scattering around at your feet. It's a fantastic experience, and you can do that here at the Uyangs. Can you, Graeme? Do they do that there? Yeah.
At Odonata, Mount Rothwell is the name of the sanctuary.
Okay.
So
can we put a note up on that when we're on the little footnote too? Because that if it is available and you can book it or something, it's good. You're also putting some money into that really important conservation work that they do. They're doing, trying to reintroduce mammals primarily, I think, around Australia into different habitats. So I've got got in dry arid areas. I've got the bilby stuff happening. It came out of South Australia originally. That would be great. I'd love to have a look at that.
Well, it's a great thing for schools, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gets back to that thing of the landscape pre-European times and what it supported as opposed to what we've got now.
Yeah.
So if the community was ambitious, including all those, larger farm areas, and if we could provide the right economic incentives, that thing about economy, how do we provide those inducements to actually transform the model to make it sustainable and equitable for all the other things that we share the planet with, and a new way of doing things, essentially.
So, Graeme, you've been, or you are, not have been, you are being a very active, energetic enthusiast in this space that we've been talking about. Have you ever taught? Do you teach?
No, I'm not a teacher. My brother is.
The other twin's a teacher.
Yeah.
Because wow, you would be a fantastic teacher. I can't see why you couldn't teach. And some of your learnings need to be shared more broadly than the few local people who are lucky enough to be in your presence from day to day and hearing this stuff. But how can we get your message, out to more people? Like, that's a challenge. I'm not asking you to try and get all over Australia, but that somehow more people need to know about what works and how it works from your lived experience, because it's a fantastic story. Have you thought about that?
Interesting point that you've raised, because we've produced a film called Saving Spring Creek Valley.
Okay.
That's coming up soon, isn't it?
So we've already done 9 presentations.
Yep.
2 of them, 7 of them to sort of private entities and conservation groups, but 2 publicly at Patagonia, and then another one at the Mac Playhouse. Mm-hmm. We've got another one coming up at the Pivotonian, and another one then at Hoop Gallery on the 3rd or 4th of September.
Is this a showing of the film you're talking about with some speaking as well?
So there's I do a sort of a quick pre-presentation to the film, because I'm trying to get people to understand those other bigger issues.
Yes.
And why it is that SCEG's putting so much energy into Spring Creek Valley.
Yeah.
The film itself, there's not many examples anywhere across Australia where the community has actually won a battle against the developers, and this is one of the few times that it has occurred. Yeah. So I feel incredibly privileged to be a part of the group that did that.
Did that, yeah.
And the film not only it covers 3 things. It covers limits to growth. Mm-hmm. How sustainable is it to just, for one species to just keep expanding out across the landscape? And is there any conflict with all the other species that we share the planet with? Well, there is, and that's why nature's declining. But then the second thing is the battle to save Spring Creek, the power of community. And the power of community, it's the power of community that has essentially enabled Spring Creek to not be developed. And then the third thing is the ecology. And we partnered with Grassland Films to make the film. And Grassland Films are in their own right making films of international significance. The cinematography is wonderful.
Excellent.
And it portrays a snapshot of the different birds and animals that you see in the valley.
Fantastic.
And it also shows the partnerships that were created with the Barbara Wilson, the associate professor, the Geelong Field Mats, for instance, and the community groups. Good things can happen when people start talking and we work together. Yeah. So that's why I'm incredibly optimistic about what we could do in Spring Creek, because despite all the odds, we've managed to get to this point. So the battle to save Spring Creek started in 2007. We didn't get the nod that it was saved until 2022, even though there's a little bit more work that has to be done. And now there's a whole lot of people that are chomping at the bit to get involved with the revegetation work, which mostly involves weed removal and stuff. So it's not glamorous. It's slow and it's tedious, but it's important. But people are doing it. Yeah. And that's a great thing.
I've got a technical question that comes from way back in my early working days about public land management. Is there a water frontage reserve to Spring Creek? Do you know? You probably would know.
Well, this is another interesting aspect to Spring Creek. Spring Creek Valley was one of the very first pieces of or areas of land in Victoria that was settled. Yeah. Pretty soon after Victoria was declared a state in 1840. Yeah. So up until 1881, title went down to the middle of the creek. Yeah. In 1905, that law changed to the top of the embankment. Yeah. But no one knows where the top of the embankment is.
Yeah, it's a bit like the New South Wales border with the Murray River.
Yeah. And then over and above that, it's only to recognised waterway areas. So if it's not an officially recognised waterway, which it seems Spring Creek isn't in those upper reaches, then it's actually got no legal protection from the state.
Yep.
So that's where it becomes even more important to have these conversations with private landowners.
Damn, I thought I'd solved another corridor of habitat for us. I thought that could be public land, 15-metre frontage to each side of Spring Creek, which would be a fantastic thing. It's not there. Yeah. And I'm not surprised. I know many of our major watercourses do have that, and it remains public land, and adjoining owners have to fence it out, keep stock off it, a whole range of things, license it, as you know, Graeme would know about that, which is fantastic, that there's still public land along the side of many of those watercourses. But a lot of the earlier ones, I know, and this is one of them, doesn't have it. It's unfortunate, but yeah. So,
what I see it as a challenge, it's not, the door hasn't been slammed in our face. We just have to work differently, just as we need to work with all the landowners within Spring Creek Valley to produce new outcomes. It can be done, and we've got a foot in the door. We're doing it already. We've already got some really lucky free kicks, like the ridgeline. The fact that Stewie's working on his land. There are other landowners that are interested, and one by one we'll knock those dominoes down, and we can produce a really great asset for the community and for nature, and that just it takes the time it takes.
Nimbin of the South. This could be the new. This could be the. This could,
no. Have you been to Nimbin? No.
Well, I'm thinking of the reputation of it being, a strong community that is fierce about their own independence locally. No, we don't want to be Nimbin.
Okay. Fantastic, Graeme. Well, thank you for your work. Thank you for what you do for our local community, for the broader community, and for our planet overall, really. The films. So Pivotonian, do you know the date of that one off the top of your head? That's
actually after the Hoop Gallery.
Okay, Hoop Gallery's next.
Yeah, the Hoop Gallery is next in Torquay. So the Hoop Gallery sits next to Surf World.
Yeah, so that's the old basketball court.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, near the library, and Surf World. Yep.
So we've got a joint art exhibition celebrating Spring Creek. That'll start on the third, it's the first week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that there'll be the exhibition.
Okay.
And the film will be on Friday, the 4th of September.
Okay.
So people can go to the SCEG website.
Yep.
And
which we'll put a link to.
Yep. Yeah, and just look up the Hoop Gallery.
Right.
Yeah. We look forward to carrying the conversation.
Absolutely.
And the Pivotonian showing will be behind that much later?
Yeah, that's I think that's in mid-September.
Yeah,
so we've been incredibly surprised because the film actually got shown at the Nova Cinema up in Melbourne, and it's also been shown at Federation Square.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long does it run?
37 minutes.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot of filmmaking. That's fantastic.
Yep.
Well, congratulations on the film too. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I'm also really looking forward to, if I think I can by the sound of it, walking that ridge line.
Me too.
Or riding my bike. Could I do either from end to end?
Yeah. It's a goat track from Duffields Road up to Christian College, and then it turns into the old Great Ocean Road.
Yeah, okay.
But you'll watch that transform into an end-to-end cyclist pedestrian. All that feeds into our local economy too with tourism. So many buses go down to see the 12 Apostles.
Yes.
But what happens if we decided that we had something that was equally significant here, and they could stay here, bed and breakfast for it, whatever. So all that,
get off, and like the Apostles, you just sort of get off the bus and walk across the road. That you could do a really nice bushwalk through.
And
that
stop at Ashmore Arts, buy something.
Tomato from one of the local artists.
It's
absolutely
thinking of it as a precinct. Really. What's the space?
and before we let you go, I did warn you, I think by email, that we do ask a question at the end of the show. It feels a little bit kind of attached on the end now this time, but anyway, that's okay. So we do like to ask our guests the question: if you were able to go back in time and meet your 14-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I think as a young 14-year-old, this is no surprise. You think you know everything. And I think probably from my school days, maybe a bit too misogynistic, I think, as a young man.
Yep.
So I think also whatever you're doing, that stays with you for life. And I try to think of it now as, okay, what are the memories that I want to hold? And I would prefer that they're good memories, and you don't have to wake up and sort of be hitting yourself and go, you stupid idiot, what'd you do that for? So for me, as if I was 14 years old again, that's what I'd be saying. That just whatever your actions are, think about how that is going to stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, look, whatever if you do indeed have regrets from those days, you've certainly made up for it with your community work, and I'm not saying you do have regrets from those days, but certainly your life has been a great credit to you, I've got to say, and I'm glad you were recognised with the OAM recently, as embarrassed you might be by it, but it certainly goes to show that that our community is much richer for the work you do. So, thank you, Graeme.
And isn't it great that Graeme's been a recipient of that wonderful award, which often goes to can go to people for what they've been paid to do in their life. Here's one that's gone to a community person who's working hard at a community level. I think that's where they should be focused, those awards. And I'd like to also congratulate Graeme on that award. That's a fantastic achievement and well and truly well earned now that I've heard what's led up to it. So congratulations, and also thanks, Graeme, for your contribution locally. And I can see the impact that it's likely to have into the future as people hopefully become a little bit more aware and a bit more focused on our local natural environments. And looking after them.
It's been fun. Thank you.
And I suggest if people do want to get involved or they do want to learn more, obviously the film is a great place to start. If they are local, they can get down to the Torquay, the Hoop Gallery one, or if they're in the Geelong area, they can get to the Pivotonian. And if not, if they're further abroad, then jump on the Surf Coast Energy Group website. We'll add a link, and I'm guessing there's perhaps links to how people can get involved. Whether I'm sure they can donate to their time or their money or something to help you guys do the work you're doing.
That yes to all those. So it's Surf Coast Environment Group.
Environment Group.
What did I say?
Energy. I think you said energy again.
Oh, okay.
So that's just because that's what we were.
No problem. Well, we'll put links in the show notes. So thank you, Graeme. Thank you for your time.
Okay, good on you guys.
Thanks, Graeme. Thank you.
Rambling man. Some folks might say that I'm no good, that I